try to look for correlations. We've been using it to look at time trends, in other words, how something is correlated with time. But in this case, you're looking at two variables at a point in time. You're looking to see if more traffic is correlated with more new club members. And the data here looks not promising. But I used a trick that we've already used, and that we'll use again. And this is as good a time as any to introduce it. And one of the reasons it doesn't look good is the data is highly skewed. You've got most of the observations here, and then you see them tail off in terms of both of our variables. Regression is sensitive to the distribution of the data. Most regression is built around the assumption that everything's normally distributed. And by normal, we mean everything's got that nice bell-shaped look to it. Clearly, this doesn't satisfy that assumption. So I transformed the data using a trick that we used already. I took the log of the data. And what the log of the data does, in addition to allow us to examine things as time trends, it actually normalizes the data. Look at the difference between this distribution and those distributions. Those are nowhere near normal. And these are almost look like the ones I drew. And once you do that, the correlation goes from that mess to that. The power of taking a logarithm of something. We use it to calculate growth rates. In this case, I used it to normalize the data so I can see if there's a clear correlation between these two. So there's clearly a correlation, a positive correlation between the number of tasting room visitors and the number of new club members you sign up. So now I could run a regression, a nice big multiple regression, similar to what we've been doing. And here's our regression coefficients, and we'll go over these in a minute. One of the other issues, and this is something we probably won't cover in this class, is something called two-way causality. That is, we normally assume that more visitors cause more club sign-ups, right? That's our natural assumption. But it wouldn't be outrageous to say that, well, the more people sign up for your club, what do they do when they sign up for your club? They visit your, they do that, but they also may visit the winery, right? Because one of the benefits of signing up for a wine club or being a wine club member is what?
Free tasting.
Free tastings. So the causality goes both ways. And that wreaks havoc with regressions. And it's one of the things you always have to be cognizant of when you run regressions is my causality running in the right direction? And in this case, it's running in the right direction, but it's also going both ways. And this is a problem that has come up with another paper I'm doing regarding social media, analyzing the effects of social media. Well, there's this method of regression called instrumental variable regression, which we're not going to cover. It's covered in more advanced classes. One of the top papers on that is on our website, if you want to read more about it. I forgot who the author is, but it's there. So I ran these instrumental variable regressions. And these are essentially adjusted for the fact that you've got that two-way causality. So let's just go down the list of coefficients here. You look at whether or not reimbursing a fee is going to affect the number of signups. And it is for, concentrate on these last three columns. It's positive for all wineries, it's negative for Sonoma, and it's positive for Napa, which is strange. So weird results there. It could be our sample's not all that big. Number of visitors who purchase, it's positive across the board, meaning the more people buy stuff in your tasting room, the more people are going to sign up for a wine club. And here's the wage stuff. Wage is one of the few things that is really significant and really big. And statistical significance, and we all know what statistical significance is, don't we? That's not quite what my grader's telling me. There's quite a few people who have no idea what statistical significance is. We have one rule for statistical significance. And it's what? If what?
Greater than negative 2.
If what's greater than 2? The t-stat. Exactly. A lot of the answers you're writing on your homeworks is whether or not the coefficients are greater than 2. That's not quite right. Some of you wrote like essays on that you must have copy and pasted from Wikipedia or Idiotopedia because it's completely wrong. And wherever you got it, you need to remove that page from your web browser and just go by the simple rule we set in class. If the t-stat is greater than 2, negative or positive, then that thing is statistically significant. I haven't covered p-values, but p-values are what are listed in here. What we have covered is these little star things. The star things tell us whether or not things are significant. So we don't even have to know about that. Does it have a star? Yes, then it's significant. Does it have 2 stars? Yes, it's even more significant. So that's even easier. So in your answers on your problem sets, use the rule that we gave in class. It's real simple, it's real easy. You don't need a paragraph from Wikipedia to tell me whether something's statistically significant or not. You just need to tell me whether or not that t-stat is less than or greater than 2 in absolute value. And that's it. So already we've learned, reinforced something. But that's your question, wasn't it? Was paying more, does it lead to more signups? The answer is yes. And it's statistically significant, whatever that means. Tenure, having more tenured people is positively correlated, at least for all the wineries in Sonoma. It's negative actually in Napa, but in Napa it's not statistically significant. In Sonoma it is. Let's see, tasting room fee. Interesting, higher tasting room fees, more club signings. That makes sense if what's true.
If you get free tastings and if you're part of the wine club.
Yeah, but this is already saying, but this is maybe perhaps before you've signed up.
Sign up for the wine club, you don't have to pay for your tasting fees, so.
That's true, but we've already got something that'll address that later, individually. What a tasting room fee might act as a screening device. In other words, higher tasting room fees keep out window shoppers, right? People that have no intention of joining the club, have no intention of buying wine, those kinds of things. So it screens out your, we'll call them marginal consumers, people that aren't all that interested in stuff. Interestingly, the average club purchase, the average annual club purchase. In other words, when you commit to a wine club, how much is that annual commitment? How many shipments and what's the price per shipment? And this is in terms of annual shipments. So positive, negative, statistically significant for all, negative for Sonoma but not significant, positive for Napa but not significant. So mixed results here, not really correlated. Discount to wine club members. Again, mixed results, none of which are statistically significant. Do they work on commission? This is the one I was waiting for. Positive for all, negative for Sonoma, positive for Napa, but none of them are statistically significant. No stars across there. All right, the effective visitor. So we skipped this one because I saved that till end. Notice it's got 2 stars all the way across. So it's extremely significant. It's positive all the way across. And the signs are, well, the signs are consistent. Interpretation of, forget that. What I did was convert it to a conversion rate. and here's our conversion rates. About 6.28% for all wineries, 7.5, like I said, for Sonoma, and 4 for Napa. So what this means is it takes about 16 tasting room visitors to sign up one club signing. It takes about 13 in Sonoma, it takes about 21 in Napa. Now, this was a big controversy, at least as of Tuesday. We kind of spent a lot of time on this. Why do you think that is? Since you raised your hand.
I had a question for you first, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So with the visitors, there's a lot of, at least from my experience, a lot of controversy whether or not the already wine club members count towards your overall visitor count.
Yeah.
So I mean, our consultant was making this count, so we'd see maybe 100 wine club members. That would count towards our overall visitor count, and then we would figure out our conversion ratio based on that full number. Well, 100 of those people were
Already wine club members.
exactly impossible to sign up for wine club.
Yeah. So we didn't know that, but we do know that new wine club members are visiting. Wine club members are visiting. That's why we ran those instrumental variable regressions to correct that. So we didn't have that information.
And so the base numbers would be post, maybe accounting for that.
Yeah, and if without accounting for that, we got much lower rates. We got these rates. Once we accounted for that, we got a little bit higher, significantly higher rates.
Napa is it because they had visitors from all over the world, and so people from Sweden and Mexico City are less likely to purchase than someone from Washington State due to shipping costs.
Perhaps, yeah. And I think it's a broader issue is when you look at differences like this, and these are fairly stark differences, you want to ask yourself two questions. One, are people behaving differently in Napa and Sonoma? Or kind of what you related to, are people different?
Demographic.
Are the visitors different in Napa and Sonoma? And I wrote another paper that we're going to be looking at later that basically, well, think about what's the top tourist destination in California outside of Disneyland? Napa. Exactly. And once you leave, not necessarily wine country, it's really Napa. Because once you leave Sonoma County and wine country, very few people have heard of Sonoma County. They don't know where it is. They had no idea they make wine out here. When they think wine country, they think Napa. So, and that's true of outside of Sonoma County. We like to think we're world famous for our wine, and we are, but it's a much smaller segment of the population that have heard of this. So Napa gets people, not just from all over the world, but from the whole spectrum of wine consumers. From the novice wine consumer to the very well-informed wine consumer. So people signing up for wine clubs, are those going to tend to be novice consumers or well-known or experienced, informed consumers? Yeah, that's what I would say. Now, we know that Napa gets more people, it's more popular, it's more famous, it's more well-known. What about Sonoma? Who comes to Sonoma? People that know what?
No wine. They're already
People that know wine. Exactly. People that know wine know that Sonoma makes pretty good wine too. So in Napa, you've got two adjacent areas separated by a mountain range. You've got Sonoma and you've got Napa. Here you've got one of the most world famous regions, wine country regions in the world. So you've got both novice and we'll just call them informed consumers. Here you've got mostly what?
Informed.
I would say that. And we'll have to test this hypothesis, which we will do. So, where would you expect to see higher conversion rates? Because you've got people that are more serious about their wine coming here. Not all of them. You just have less novice consumers. Why? Because they never heard of Sonoma. I've never heard of Sonoma, so how can I go there and taste and then not buy? So we have a smaller audience of not of a more well-informed, but of a well-informed subset that Napa gets. right? And this is the whole point of market segmentation. Are there differences in are people behaving differently, or is it different people? And those are the two questions you have to ask. My answer to this is it's a subset of people. We're getting these people, we're not necessarily getting these people here. Does that offend you as much as it offended people that I spoke to on Monday, Tuesday? I don't think it's that offensive of a statement. I think it's, anyone in Napa would argue that Napa is more famous for wine than Sonoma. Nobody's going to dispute that. But that fame comes at a cost, right? That fame comes at a cost. And the cost is you're going to get, for people that know nothing about wine, I'm going on a date, I want to try to impress my date, I know absolutely nothing about wine, but what? I know Napa, exactly. That much I know. So when I order off the menu, I say, give me the Napa Cab. Why? Because it's from Napa. You could have an equivalently ranked Sonoma wine for less or whatever, but I've never heard of Sonoma because I live in Nebraska or Wisconsin or Modesto, for God's sake. And I think I'd rather live in Nebraska or Wisconsin than Modesto. But besides, that's besides the point. But that comes with some window shoppers. That's all we're saying. These people are going, they're visiting one of the world's most famous wine country regions, and they're not really wine connoisseurs. They're not going to commit themselves to a couple $100, almost $1,000 a year in wine shipments that they're going to have to buy every couple of months. Unless you're serious about wine, you're not going to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I don't think it's necessarily different behaviors, it's different people. And that's a theme that runs through a lot of my research is, can we make a distinction between our people behaving differently, or is it just a different subset of people?
Do you find to fall off with, kind of like the homework we did this last week, places to see too many guests, you no longer have that ability to have that personal interaction with the customer and then convert wine clubs. I mean, in our tasting room, if we have around 30 a day, we have really high club signups. If we have less than that, they drop. If we have 40, 50, 60, they drop because you can't talk to them.
I didn't have daily data, but I did test that hypothesis, and it didn't pan. I wasn't able to show it statistically that there was a threshold at which there's too many visitors and maybe it's too crowded to sign up for wine club members. But I do address that in the next set of slides, which looks at another thing. Here's all the means of a lot of this data. Let's see, what are we looking at? If you look at the average club shipment, and this is annual, for $500 for Sonoma, $700 for Napa. Average pay, tasting room free, we know that's $15 in Sonoma, twice as much in Napa. Where's average pay? Average pay is, where am I missing it? Starting wage, $14 in Sonoma, $17 in Napa. And let's see, other than that, not a whole lot of difference. More working on commission in Napa than Sonoma. Oh, then I just kind of said, if you take the conversion rate, multiply it times the average number, or I'm sorry, the average annual shipment, you get an annual addition to club revenue per 100 tasting room visitors of about 3,800, 4,000 for Sonoma, and about 3,400 for Napa. So for every 100 visitors, we're going to get 7 or 4 tasting room club members. Multiply that times the annual shipment, and that's your annual increase in club revenue per 100 tasting room visitors. So this will all be made public pretty soon. Length of wine club membership was interesting also. because this will address a couple of things. I looked at total wine club members, and this kind of relates back to what you were saying. It turns out that the effect of club size is positive for small wine clubs, but negative for large wine clubs. So what's happening is there's a threshold effect. So we're jumping on the bandwagon, but then the bandwagon gets crowded, and we want to be in a more exclusive club. So we want to be with the popular wine clubs, but we don't want to be with the masses, right? We don't want to be in the same club with someone from Modesto, for example. Again, let's harp on Modesto. So what's there to like about Modesto?
Greek Food Festival.
What's that?
The Greek Food Festival.
The Greek Food Festival, yeah. Besides that. So I looked at that, and I was able to model that and find the turning points. So it was about 1,600 for all wineries. When the club got to about 1,200 in Sonoma, we started to see a drop off. For Napa, the threshold was a lot smaller. When the club got to about 500, we started to see a drop off.
Just curious, did you ever segment this by like age to see which demographics?
I don't have it.
You don't have that? It'd probably be hard to find.
Yeah, even, I just got some data, again, literally yesterday. That's from the actual, it's actual individual level tasting room data. So purchases made by individuals at tasting rooms. It's a huge data set, 18 million observations. Big. And I got to dive into that pretty soon. And hopefully that'll have some robust stuff. And from that, I'll actually know where they live, where they're coming from. We got credit card information, so we'll know that stuff, although I don't have their credit card number. Although I asked for that. But I've got some of their demographic stuff.
Since membership numbers are proprietary knowledge, they don't give that out. If you're tasting room manager or wine club manager, and you're wanting to manage for the perception of the club, this is relevant for events. Is that how you would reinterpret this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you want to, if you're trying to get someone to sign up for your club, you don't want to say, hey, we're one of the biggest wine clubs in the world. Join us, right? It's like, join it because we're popular. At some point in time, you want some exclusivity to something that is really somewhat of a significant expenditure, right? You're getting, it was $700, but that was the average shipment for Napa. $500, that was the average for Sonoma. It's usually $100, $150, $200 a couple times a year, 3, 4, 5 times a year. So that's a significant commitment. You kind of want to be some exclusivity, I guess, to that. And that's really what that's saying. Now, I tested the same approach when we looked at visitors, and I didn't see that threshold of diminishing returns. Tasting room visitors was negative. Let's see, yeah, it was negative on membership. So you also don't want to go to a tasting, you don't want to join a club that has a packed tasting room. More tasting room visitors generally led to shorter length of club membership. Tasting room fee, mostly negative except for in Napa. Tenure of staff, mostly positive. Wage, mostly positive, which makes sense. This was the one I was interested in. Commission. It's negative, and why would it be negative?
Pushing salesmen.
Yeah.
Going to long-term wine club members.
Yeah, so it makes sense, right? You got a pushy salesman, and they're pressuring you to join the wine club, so you do, just to shut them up and get them out of your face. And then when you get back home to Nebraska, what do? You cancel, exactly. So this makes sense, that you'd have negative coefficients, except for Napa, but again, they're not significant. So I think, but the sample size is really small, 43. There's really, the ones we can rely on are here, and as long as we're seeing kind of similarities, it makes makes sense. With my 18 million observations, I should be able to get around some of these data limitations. Is the tasting fee reimbursed? These are negatives, that makes sense. You got a 50-50 chance, yes or no?
This doesn't make sense to me. I find it's an incentive to join the club if you
Yeah.
get the tasting feedback.
Well, we're looking at length of club membership.
Oh, no.
That's why they joined the club.
Exactly. That's why they join the club. They join the club so that they get their tasting fee reimbursed, and then when they get home, they quit.
Oh, yeah.
So, makes perfect sense. Average club shipment, the size didn't, well, it was positive. Was it significant at all? Yeah. Yeah. Discount to wine club members, really negative and positive, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Are there rewards to loyalty for staying longer? Positive, but not really significant. And that's about it. So, hot off the presses.
Did you look at, were they all standard clubs, or were any of them custom clubs, or like rewards-based programs?
Yeah, some of them were, in terms of the clubs, no, I didn't have that much, I didn't have that data, but I did know if they were open and, or reserved tasting rooms. The problem is the sample size. I had 40, in total for Napa and Sonoma, so cutting those in half, there's just not enough to really run any regressions and do any analytics, so, somewhat limited to what I can do with this particular data set.
Did you hear of any wineries that had a cancellation fees for their club? That's something that we just introduced, but.
Really? Penalty?
Within a duration of time, it's discouraged the join to get immediate benefits, and then, we offer a 30% discount upon joining the club for their first purchase. And so, if they get that 30% and then save $100 and they quit the club, within a year, they're charged $50 for quitting the club.
No, is that
That's the same with.
Becoming more
where I
common?
went to.
So it's becoming more common?
I found it to be very often.
Yeah, but you actually.
That's awesome.
If
I
you
hate
wanna
doing
quit
it.
within the year, it's just a $50 cancellation fee.
Huh.
We use it
We
more
always
of a-
tell them that when they're signing up anyway.
We find it's more of a deterrent rather than something we actually enforce.
Yeah.
And going back to the custom membership, because I work at a winery in Napa, and one of the comments that I get a lot from our wine club members is that they appreciate that we let them customize, so that, because we're very, very flexible. I think we're probably a little bit too junior for members. But that's one thing that they really appreciate, is that they can select which wines that they want, and we let them skip a shipment a year or two. And, I don't know, we show ways to, that we thought of them. So I think that would make a difference. I mean, that's one reason why a lot of people quit the clubs, that they don't want to be committed to receiving wine that they may not like.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, if I join a wine club, I make sure I don't get white wines. I just don't
Right.
drink a lot of white wine. So, Zin Club or Cab Club, or they have red clubs or assorted and all those things. So, yeah, but a lot of clubs probably are like that. At least,
There's a mix, but I know it's a trend that a lot of wineries are doing a complete custom club, and so I'd be curious if, like, yeah, or they'll send you an email like 2 weeks in advance. They'll say, hey, these are the selections. If you don't want this, email us back and we'll change it. And so I know a lot of wineries are doing that. So I'm curious if they have, higher signups, if their retention is longer.
that I don't have. This was really, really anonymized data. It was, we don't know the wineries, we know the size, we know the price points, we know where they are. We could probably guess within, there's 400 some odd wineries in Sonoma and double that in Napa, so it would be pretty hard to kind of figure out who's who with that particular data set. I was hoping to get wineries to give us their name. So they gave us their data, but it's anonymized again. So, but we'll have a little bit more information. All right.
I had a question on the homework.
Yeah, exactly. What was it again?
On 3A,
3A. Did I collect them yet? Let me collect them. Or do you want to keep yours, so we can borrow yours?
We can look at it.
3. What was 3A?
3A is using the regression model to determine the sales
Gotcha.
difference of Highway 29 and Silverado.
Let's see, estimate regression of records of retail sales of Highway 29 wineries with that of Silverado. Okay. And let's see, this should be, is it just how to calculate it?
The question is that when we're doing all the other ones, and if you just do, a tab region on that, we have 4 variables, or not,
Yeah.
we have 4 things. We have Napa open, Napa Reserve, Silverado open, Silver Reserve, and
Gotcha.
how do we, your question is asking not for one specific one, it was for comparing in general Napa
Yeah.
Highway 29 versus Silverado Trail.
What'd you do?
I made that Silverado variable, that second dummy, I made it so that it would select all the, it would turn all the Silverado, it would be like generate this if Silverado open and reserve, that'd make it
So
0.
you added the open and reserve together?
Yeah.
How many,
And then-
anyone else do that?
I just did totals and yeah, that's for,
I don't think there was a total though, because there was Silverado, Reserve,
No, I
Silverado.
meant both, included both reserved and open for that first one thing.
So you created a dummy.
Because you just did, I created a dummy that was open and reserved, or reserved.
Like his?
Yeah.
Okay. How many did that? That's fine. I think my intention, and don't worry about it, I'll make sure I alert the grader, was to look at the open ones and the reserved ones separately. So there wasn't a question that had you look at the reserved ones?
Yeah.
Well, the
it was
following
just-
two.
just for A.
For A, okay, and then B was?
Open close on 29.
Okay.
And then the last one was open close on Trail.
Okay. Yeah, I think my intention was to look at the open, Silverado open, but it doesn't say that, so it's unclear. The fact that you were able to create those dummies is
Well,
more
the T,
impressive than anything else.
the T stats are really low, so that's why I was wondering if there's a better way to do it, or if there's some other way you want
What are
it.
those T-stats for?
Because I did the regression.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And
I
they're
forgot what
just-
T-stats were. So let me see what the T-stats are for, so when you added them up, the T-stats were relatively small.
I didn't put them on my homework, so I don't have it in front of me, but they were all pretty much less than 2. Except for 1 maybe. But that's what I done mine.
Yeah, and I didn't do that, so I couldn't tell you what it looks like. But, no, that's an error on my part, I'll have to correct that. Good. Good work in constructing your own dummies though, and adding those up, that's impressive. Any other questions?
Be nice, right?
We're gonna we're gonna move more into some of the stuff we just did. Go ahead and pass those in. Thank you. All right. How are we feeling about Stata? Good?
Better.
Comfortable? Okay,
I still like to do the graphs in Excel.
you still like to do the graphs in Excel?
I mean, this for this homework, I mean, I got them to work in
Stay there.
Stata, but.
But it's easier for you to export
Yeah,
it into
especially
Excel?
what, to make it clean and
Yeah, the graphs are
the
definitely-
legends and, you know, it's just.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
definitely better, and you should do that, in all honesty, you should. Now, Stata is good for taking a quick look at those graphs, even if they're ugly. Take a quick look, make sure everything looks right, boom, export the data into Excel, and you got better results.
Do you want both of them on the homework?
No, whatever one looks best, but here's the third alternative, is there is now a move towards getting away from even Excel and making things even nicer. What does that mean? There's a whole field of data visualization tools now called dashboards.
Yeah.
And one of those dashboards, the most popular of those dashboards is what?
Tableau?
Is Tableau. So you use Tableau?
No, I just anticipated it coming.
But you've heard of it.
Uh-huh.
And what it is a data visualization tool. So what PowerPoint does, what you can do in PowerPoint is you can put your Excel graphs in there and they look really nice. They look way better than Stata graphs. What Tableau does is allow you to not just take snapshots, but actually have interactive graphs. So instead of having, like when we had Napa open, Napa reserved, Silverado open, Silverado reserved. We had all these things. Instead of having 4 different or 5 different graphs of all different kinds of combinations, what something like Tableau would do would allow you to have an interactive graphing data visualization tool that will let you pick any combination of regions or price points or anything else that you wanted to look at.
So like a pivot in a way, but for.
It's a pivot, yeah. It's a step above pivot tables. It's actually a lot like Excel. If you look underneath the hood of Tableau, it really is nothing more than a spreadsheet. So its real benefit is that it's a great presentation tool.
So what do you need to put into it in order to get that kind of output?
The same thing that you're doing now. You need to be able to take the data and copy and paste it into a spreadsheet like Excel. So when we open up Tableau, there's a spreadsheet behind it. And you copy and paste it, and then you just got to figure out how to get the graphs to look the way you want. So Tableau is an awesome tool. It's one of those things where you're starting to see it, especially in jobs that have the title BI, Business Intelligence. Almost all of them are going to require Tableau. They're going to require some sort of data visualization. Has anyone used it? Has anyone seen it used?
In case it helps anybody, lynda.com has a nice tutorial on it.
We're going to do it in here. One of the problems with Tableau is kind of like with Stata. It's expensive. You can't buy it. Yeah.
Is it similar to like Prezi? You ever heard of Prezi?
No, what is it?
It's a presentation tool, so I wasn't sure if it was the same thing or not. It's kind of interactive. a little bit.
Oh, is it?
But
Yeah.
I would say
It's more PowerPoint-ish.
It's more power. Yeah, it sounds like more PowerPoint-ish. And actually, Microsoft just bought a company that has a Tableau competitor called DataZen, Z-E-N. But it's new. Microsoft is probably going to do with it what it was going to try to do with it what it did with Explorer, Excel, Word. For those of you that aren't old enough to remember, Explorer wasn't the best or the most popular web browser. Something called Netscape was huge. It had 95% of the market.
And AOL came out.
But it only cost $10, $15, I think. I think $10, $15 for a gold version. So it wasn't much. But Microsoft built their own browser, and then did what?
Made free.
They gave it away for free. So $15 versus 0, even though Netscape might be a little bit better, nobody's heard of Netscape anymore. The #1 word processor at one time was something called WordPerfect. And word came along. The number one spreadsheet at one time was something called Lotus 123, which is awesome, way more powerful than Excel. But Microsoft bundled, made Office, bundled them all together, and that really was the death of Word Perfect. It was the death of Lotus and some other things. So I have a feeling that Microsoft is going to try something similar with this data Zen with Tableau. They're probably going to give it away or make it part of Office, and we'll see what happens with Tableau. But right now, like Netscape had 90-some-odd% of the browser market, Tableau's got probably that much of the data visualization market. So it's a nice tool. They have conferences in San Francisco. Lynda.com has tutorials. I'll show you a tutorial. What I was able to do, or what you can do, is you can get a student license. So I got everyone a student license for Christmas. I'm going to give it to you early. So you can download Tableau from tableau.com, Tableau, and you can install it, and you can get a 30-day trial, which is probably going to be good enough for most of us. But if you want 6 months, I'll email out everyone a key that will keep it active for 6 months. If you end up liking it, and it's an incredibly powerful tool, and we're gonna play with it. If you end up liking it, and you graduate, then just a little vote of confidence. Yeah, just email me again next semester, and I'll have these keys, and I can keep you. Kind of like I let you borrow Stata. I'll let you borrow Excel. Tableau for an extended period of time. But one of the things it does is it actually does the thing we're going to do today. So today we're going to do forecasting. Forecasting means moving beyond the data set that we have. So we've got data for a period of time, right? We've got data, let's say we got data going up to, what month are we in? October. We've got data going up to October 8th, today. We want to forecast the next 5 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 6 months or whatever it is. How do we do that? So we're going to do that. Tableau actually has a built-in forecasting tool that's pretty powerful. It's pretty good. That works pretty well. So we're going to do our forecasting here. And then we'll show you Tableau and show you how to do some forecasting in Tableau. And the forecasting that Tableau uses is basically regression-based, the same way we're going to do it. So really, really cool tool. But there is, like everything else, there's a small learning curve. Tableau is, it's all, what do you call that, drag and drop, right? It's icons, so there's not a whole lot of coding like there is in Stata. You just drag and drop. You just got to know where to drag and where to drop stuff. And you can look up YouTube and Lynda charges, doesn't it? Yeah.
Unless you have a Marin library card.
Oh, really? Okay. But YouTube, you can usually get these things free. And I'll show you how to do it also. So I've seen people go from this class with enough Tableau to get a job and that are now building dashboards. So really good tool. Nice to introduce another tool. But I usually like to wait until we're at least somewhat comfortable with Stata before we introduce another software, because we first started with Excel that not everyone was comfortable with. Then we moved to Stata, which nobody was comfortable with. But now that we're a little bit comfortable, we got to throw in another curveball, so to speak.
Do you use Power Query in Excel at all?
No, I don't use Excel for anything.
Okay.
I use Stata for everything.
Okay.
The people that sent me that 18 million observation data set said you're going to need to use a database and this, that, and all that, because it won't fit in Excel.
Mm-hmm.
I dropped it into Stata and opened it up. The Stata is designed for big data sets. It's designed for real analytics. So it serves my database purposes. and it's probably Excel's isn't a database. It's Access is, but Excel is a spreadsheet. It's designed for doing some profit and loss statements, and use it for some financing, use it for some accounting, but it's not really built to handle big data sets. Even if it holds a big data set, if you've had a big data set in Excel, it'll crash, it'll hang, you'll get that little spinning circle thingy that you'll just sit there and stare at before it finally dies and shuts down, and you lose whatever work you did. It's just not, that's not what it was built for. Which is fine. We've got tools like Stata that was built to do this stuff. So, let's see. Binary choice. We're not in quantitative marketing. No, we don't want to do that stuff. We want 580.
We hit save instead of open.
Did I hit save? Oh, okay. Cancel. All right. Too many martinis for lunch. Or not enough. I'd rather err on the side of too many than too few. All right, so what do we got? We got some data. I think this is the same data set we might have used before. I'm almost certain it is. It looks the same, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Well, it all looks the same after a while. But we've got data that ran from 04, was it late 04 to 12 or 13? We'll know for certain.
In this one, you know, like when we do this in Excel, you had said to put that to text, so we see all the data.
Yeah.
But in this particular one, it stays the same, so, does it matter?
It does matter, because the reason we did that to text in Excel is because it skipped the repeated months.
Okay, that's right.
And these are just the labels.
Okay.
And Excel didn't know how to handle the fact that there's always gonna be two
That's right, yeah, for the period.
4-week ending periods that have the same month. And in all honesty, Tableau doesn't know how to handle that either. Stata, no problem. But I think I'm almost certain it's the same data set. What do we want to do? We want to say, we want to forecast from this point into the future. Right? That's it. Forecasting is part of every job. Every analytics job probably involves some element of forecast. So we want to just be able to do that. It's going to be regression based, similar to what Tableau does. Tableau has a built-in little regression thing that'll do the forecast. We're just going to do it by hand first, but we've been doing these regressions so often we're pretty comfortable with it. We're going to use the same regression model that we use to benchmark this. We're going to use to forecast. So what did we do? We did something along the lines of, and we can do cases. We generally don't want to forecast log cases. We took logs, or at least from now, up to now, we've taken logs so we can calculate growth rates. We've got the growth rate. We know how to calculate the growth rate. We can do that. Right now, we want to forecast. So, and we don't want to forecast log cases. If you came and said, well, we expect to sell 13.5 log cases next year, what the heck is 13.5 log cases? You can actually take the anti-log, but then there's another problem with that. So we're going to look at cases because we're going to forecast cases. And we had this model in which we had that. we use time, and then what? When we benchmark this? Monthly dummies, right? And I'll just use, let's use something fancy, Omega. And that was it. This was the first model we ran to examine those benchmarks, to construct that benchmark. And the whole point of that was to try to get a good representation of what's going on here. And then we said, okay, if we can accurately model, if this model accurately reflects that data, then we can use that to evaluate any 1 year performance. We can say, okay, are you above what the trend expects or below what the trend expects, accounting for the seasonality that's contained in the monthly dummies. Right. So this is a set of dummies. This is monthly dummies for months 2 through 12. Right. I just don't feel like writing all 11 of those out. We know it's a simple command in Stata. It's easy enough to do. So we're going to approach this in somewhat of the same fashion. We're going to say, if this model can accurately reflect what's been going on since 2005, right? We're probably comfortable in saying, well, if this trend's been going on for this long, it's probably going to go on for a little bit longer. So as long as we can comfortably model this, we'll feel comfortable forecasting in the future. And again, a lot of this is already known because we already modeled this, and we already know that the model fits pretty well. And there it is. There's our simple model. So we can see the output. All right, that doesn't look very good. Let's see if this looks better. There we go. So there's our model. We know that what we want to look at is the adjusted R squared, and it's pretty high. R squared only goes from 0 to 1. We said 1 is, you shouldn't be at 1. 93 is pretty good. And what that interpretation is that 93.56% of the variation in case volume is explained by this simple model, by two things: time trend, the time trend, and the seasonal variation. So, bless you. Two things are explaining what's going on in this model. So we're pretty comfortable with this. Let's see what the fit looks like. So what do? We save the regression output, and that's our predict command. Type it faster. And this is the same graph we ran earlier also. So it's a pretty good fit. Our model, our predicted case volume follows the actual time trend, the trend in cases pretty well. we were comfortable to use it as a benchmark. Our next idea is, if this trend has lasted this long, we can expect it to last a little bit longer. A year, 2 years, I think we're only gonna do a year. And a year is 13 periods, right? All right. Anyone not comfortable with that so far? We've done it all. We've done this already. So this much we've done. Sure what I did here, but I'm gonna take a look at it anyways. All right. What did I do here? I looked at, actually we did this already also. I took my, here's our predicted cases. I took the difference between the actual and predicted, and that's this here. And then I took the difference between actual and predicted and divided it by the actual. Let's go up here a second. Yeah. So you can see I took that first generate difference is just taking the difference between actual cases and predicted cases. And then I took that difference and divided it by actual cases to get a percentage difference. Basically, I want to see how far off our predictions are. How far off are our predictions? And the percentage one looks better. At least the percentage one is a little bit more intuitive. Because I don't know if I'm off by 589 cases here. Is that a big deal? Is it? What is it? What's that? It seems like a lot, doesn't it?
Would that depend on the actual overall quantity?
Yeah.
500 cases, if you have 1,000 cases, it'd be a lot, but if you have 2 million cases, it's kind of the next.
But didn't I calculate that? That's what the percentage difference is. So I was off by 589 cases, but it's only, no, you can't see it, 2%. It's only 2%. Roughly the predicted, we're talking about, what is that, 28,000 cases, and I'm off by 589. I can guarantee you any forecast you do that has, in which you're off 2%, you're a stud. You're the man or woman. That's pretty good. So that's what we're seeing. We're trying to look at where are we way off, right? We're pretty. These are all zeros. These are all zeros. 4, 3. Here's a 9% here.
In January, it was 22%.
January was 22%. Yeah. And let's see if we see anything else that's up that big. Other Januaries? Yeah, so it looks like those first couple of months we were off. There's